Hello and welcome to episode 89 of the Wisdom from the Akasha podcast. My name is Suzie. I am your host and I am an Akashic Records teacher and practitioner. Before I get into today's topic, I've had a few people reaching out to me about doing Akashic Records readings and clearings and combination sessions, so my one-off, one-on-one sessions. And there is a waitlist on my website that you can join. So I'll pop a link into the show notes for that one. It's great to hear that you're all really interested in that. And at the moment, I have to just hold a waitlist, and that waitlist is going to be notified as and when I release any sessions. So do make sure if you're interested in a one-on-one session with me that you are registered to that waitlist. I'm also in the process of doing the pre-mentorship calls with people. So this is where you spend 6 months with me. We work one-on-one together. Again, I'll pop a link into the show notes to the mentorship page. And I'm doing those calls now for the 2026 start dates. Again, if you want to be considered for the mentorship program, you want to have a call with me so we can chat to see whether or not it's a good fit, definitely make sure that you're registered for that, because once I do the 2026 intake, there won't be another intake until probably September or October 2026 for that. So do just make sure you're on both of those lists if that's something that you're interested in. So today I wanted to talk about loneliness on the spiritual journey and why when loneliness starts to show up, it's actually a good thing. So please do bear with me and allow me to explain this all properly before you just skip past the podcast episode. So recently I was on a day retreat, and the day retreat was all about the teachings of the Christian mystics. And it was a fabulous day, and I met some really cool, amazing people. And in these day retreats, if you've never been to one, there's a teaching and then you kind of go off into groups and talk through different concepts, different experiences with each other around the topic that has been raised. And one of the themes that I noticed during those little group sessions was people expressing how they really feel lonely on the spiritual journey, especially if they've come from a religious background, in the perspective of they're not able to identify specifically with one thing. Okay? So Ram Dass calls this being a universalist. When people would say to him, are you a Buddhist? Are you a Taoist? He would say, I'm a universalist. And what he would say is, I take everything from every system practice that I need to grow and evolve at that time. But what I think people find a lot of the time is when they can't give themselves a label and an identity, which of course the ego loves, they can find it quite difficult, because of course a lot of the people who were on this retreat learning about the Christian mystics would not identify as Christians, and that's completely okay, because we're there to learn about the mystics and they just happen to be from the Christian tradition. But they were finding it quite uncomfortable to be able to say, I want to learn about the mystics, but I wouldn't identify myself as a Christian. So we do have to acknowledge that it can be difficult on the spiritual journey if you have not found a specific path or tradition that you really resonate with and that you want to go all in on. There's this space where you can find it quite difficult. And this leads into this loneliness component that I want to talk about today. Before I get into the loneliness component, I do want to differentiate the difference between aloneness on the spiritual journey and loneliness. And I also want to go into why both are ultimately signs of not only where you're at, but also how they're both good for you. So aloneness and being alone and the desire to be alone is often associated with what's called the hermit phase of the spiritual awakening. Aloneness is an essential spiritual practice for anyone who is empathic, clairsentient, anyone who is working on their intuition, their clairsenses, especially if you are someone who is lunar clairdominant, to really get clear on what is my energy, what is the energy of other people, what is the energy of the collective. So spending time alone, we see throughout all spiritual and esoteric traditions as being a practice, and something that whilst you're in the hermit phase is you're going to be focusing on being alone, being in solitude. It's this energy of needing to withdraw from the external life. It's the energy of taking our focus of our consciousness internally. So it's introspection. It's really feeling this pull towards purpose and deepening that internal connection to our inner self. And this, of course, is very divine feminine energy dominant in the respect of it's a turn inwards, it's a turn into ourselves. And it's often seen as a time of spiritual rebirth. Now, one of the things that happens as soon as I mention the hermit phase, somebody's going to ask me the question, well, how long does it last? And there is no fixed time limit for any phase of the spiritual journey. The best advice I can give you is I can give you this is how it feels and this is what it's for. And the more you lean into that, the more you make use of the energy that's being presented to you, the quicker you're going to get into the next phase. Remember, the soul is never in a rush. It's only ever the ego that's in the rush. This hermit phase can last days, it can last years, it can last months, and you're going to go through more than one hermit phase throughout your spiritual journey. Part of the difficulty of this hermit phase is it often happens at the same time as what's called a void phase of your spiritual awakening journey. And this void phase is where you feel very disconnected from your guides. Okay, so you may have had months of feeling very connected, getting downloads, receiving insight, seeing visuals. You might have been seeing signs and synchronicities everywhere and been feeling really connected and think, wow, I've got it. I really feel deeply connected and supported and loved on my journey. And then one of these hermit stroke void phases hits. And this is really hard because what people tend to do is they tend to turn around and start blaming themselves and say, oh, I've done something wrong. I'm not doing it properly, and try to fix it. And actually the energy is about the introspection. The energy is about letting that old go, letting things fall away. And sometimes this can be relationships, it can be jobs, it can be old versions of yourself, and allowing space for the new to be born. So often accompanying this hermit void phase are changes in tastes, changes in habits. So your old life and your old ways no longer excite you. Now, this loneliness is a really good sign that you are coming out of the aloneness of the hermit phase or of the void phase. So this loneliness starts to kick in where you actually feel like you want to go out in the world. So when you're deep in hermit phase, you really do just want to be by yourself. And that's beautiful because that's what that's for. But when the loneliness starts to kick in, you've taken yourself off from the world, you're doing this introspection and this work, and then you're starting to feel this desire to actually get out and be with community, to find people who you really resonate with, to do things that you really enjoy. The hard part, of course, is often because of the big changes that have happened during that hermit phase, you might have no idea as to what those things are. You might have no community left. You might have no one who you really feel like, oh, I can talk to them about these things that I want to do. And, it can be quite difficult. So you're feeling this internal desire, which is what's causing the loneliness, to go out and be in community and be around people, but you're not actually sure what that should look like. It's often at this point as well that I see people really struggling with wanting to come out of the spiritual closet without being seen as too woo-woo or without being judged. And this fear that comes up often stimulates witch wounding. So that fear of being seen, that fear of being judged, that fear of being persecuted for who you truly are, for being your authentic self. This is something that comes up at this stage of loneliness. So we have the loneliness kicking in, and we also have this fear of actually being who you are, actually being authentic. So I wanted to offer a few tips for you, whether you're in the hermit phase, so you're deep in that hermit phase, you're loving the solitude, you're even contemplating going off and living in a cave, meditating for the next 15 years, some tips for that phase, and also some tips for if you're starting to feel that loneliness as to how to navigate through that. Tips for the hermit phase would be lots and lots of introspection and self-reflection. Okay, so any practices that are going to help you connect to that inner landscape is what's needed at this time. So journaling can be very helpful, intuitive practices, maybe pulling some oracle cards, maybe connecting into your Akashic Records if you're feeling very disconnected from your day-to-day guides. These types of practices can be really good, but anything where you're really taking a look at the inner landscape, try as best as you can to rest into this. You can't rush it. And all that happens if you try to rush it is it's going to take longer. So really try to surrender into this phase. The second tip for the hermit phase would be study, but go slowly with it. Okay. So this is where we're going to study slowly, and we're going to take the information from the book, the video, whatever it is that we've seen, and we're going to introspect it. We're going to reflect upon it. We're going to let it work upon us. We're going to let it marinate. The third tip is connect into your internal divine feminine energy. Okay, so you can do this by connecting to specific goddess archetypes that you're perhaps working with or you're feeling called to. You might have certain internal divine feminine energy guides that you're working with, whatever it is, but this is a very heavily internal feminine energy dominant time, and those archetypal energies that you have within you are going to support you through this period. 3 tips for the loneliness energy when that kicks in is, number 1 is to reframe it. Okay, so to try and see it as a gift. See it as a gift that you're coming out of your cocoon, you're coming out of your chrysalis, and you're now turning into this beautiful butterfly. Okay, so see it as a gift that phase is over, and try to get excited about all the new things that you can try. Now, you're going to find that you're not quite sure what to try. And this is where it can be really good just to go and try a few different things. Those old tastes, those old habits, those old hobbies may have fallen away, but now's the time to explore the new. And it does take courage. Okay, it takes a lot of courage to go to a new type of class or a new event or a new place. I get that. But do try to be excited about it and be excited about the new community and the new people and the new things that you're going to get yourself involved in. Tip number 2 is when the witch wounding comes up, take time to process it. You can't avoid the fact if there's a fear, a resistance to putting yourself out there, meeting new people, going to these things, actually being seen as someone who is spiritual or woo-woo or whatever you want to say. That can cause a lot of resistance, and if you just try to bury it, it's just going to keep coming back. Okay, so make sure that you do make space for it, take time for it, sit with it and understand it. This witch wounding is something that will need to be released. For those of you who know how to work in your Akashic Records, this is definitely something that you can do in your own Akashic Records. You can clear through the energetic stagnation caused by this witch wounding, which will then help you be able to actually go off and try these new things out. And the third thing is to find a community. Actually take the time and effort to go and find your people. We have to remember here, when it comes to find community, you don't have to agree with everything that other people within your community say. Okay? There's this weird thing that's happened since the internet became a thing and social media definitely became a thing, where people think that they can't be friends with or they can't be in community with people who have different views on things. Okay? This is partly to do with the fact that we're all in little social media echo chambers, but I think it's just helpful to remind everybody here, especially if you're my generation, which was around before the internet, that it's actually very normal to be friends with people, be in community with people, that you have different views and you have different perspectives. That's completely okay, and it's part of the beautiful tapestry that is human life, okay? If you have a fundamental disagreement with somebody on something and it's going to, cause problems, that's obviously a different matter. But just having different opinions and different perspectives is actually really healthy, and it's a good thing. It's going to be what's going to make you sit back and think and question your own beliefs and your own perspectives, and it will do the same for the other people. So remember that that is part of the rich tapestry of life. So I hope that this has helped you. Maybe you're going through the hermit phase or you're starting to feel this loneliness. I hope it's given you an understanding of what you're going through. and how to navigate your way through it. And I shall see you next week for the next episode.